Alright you guys, so here we are working on the rear of the Mustang. Before I go ahead and start removing the stock shock and the Steeda springs, there is one extra step that I have to take. I have this Steeda subframe brace, so I need to go ahead and remove this because you do have to lower the subframe itself, and in order to lower the subframe itself, you got to get rid of this bolt here. So I'm gonna do one side at a time. I'm gonna go ahead and remove this subframe brace, and then I'll go ahead and continue with the install as normal, following the steps. Alright you guys, as you can see, I went ahead and removed the Steeda subframe braces. Now I'm going to go ahead and continue to remove the stock components. So to do that, you got 2 bolts up here to remove the shock, and then you got 2 bolts holding down the base down there. Remove those 2, that'll free up your shock. And then we're going to continue to loosen up the subframe brace. Of course, you do want to support the subframe because the subframe is going to lower in order for you to get that shock out. Now, thankfully for me, I already have an aftermarket shock, so it's not as tall as the OEM shock, so this should be pretty simple to get out. If you do have the OEM shock, I would highly suggest having another set of hands to give you some help for this. But I'm going to go ahead and start removing some of this stuff, and then I'll pick it up once I got it all out. Now, when you do remove the lowering spring back there, or the spring, make sure you have a jack or pull jack or something to support the subframe. That way it just doesn't fall on you. So we'll go ahead and get going. Alright you guys, as you can see, I went ahead and removed these blue subframe bolts. I believe they're a 24mm socket. Now these front 15s or 13s, I believe they are, I like usually just loosening them up because sometimes those are kind of hard to get in. They're a little tricky, so for the most part I just loosen them up, get those bolts out. As you can see, I do have Steeda's subframe bushings here, so as you can see, they become kind of loose once you remove that bolt. You just want to make sure that they stay in place whenever you go to reinstall it. I also do have Steeda's alignment kit, which is basically just this little black deal here, and actually you can see it on this one a little bit better. As you can see, the alignment tool came out with it, and basically all this little black sleeve does is it makes it so the IRS subframe sits in the middle of the car and aligned properly. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you guys own S550s, go outside, look at your car from the rear, and you'll probably notice that one tire is sticking out more than the other. Well, for the most part, that's what that takes care of, those little black sleeves. So if you're interested in lining up your subframe, your rear subframe, and making it even on both sides, I highly recommend you look into those. Alright you guys, so I was wrong. Even with that lowering spring, it was pretty difficult to get it out. As you can see, IRS is all the way down. I actually had my girlfriend stand on the rotor and jump, or push it down a little bit enough so I could get the lowering spring out. Now that it's out, I'm going to go ahead and install the new spring, which will be a lot shorter, so I'll actually have to use my jack to put tension on it, and then we'll continue to install the shock. Almost done. Alright you guys, so I'm still working on the passenger side. I got this spring in place. Now I did want to point out, for height adjustment in the rear, these are the collars that you want to adjust on the actual spring itself. Now you just want to make sure that the spring itself comes with a little rubber piece that's in here, and it replaces the OEM big rubber top hat. Now before I move forward with installing my blue subframe bolts and my shock, I do have to build the shock. Now one thing I did not mention, this is the stock shock here. As you can see, there is the top mount for the shock itself. I went ahead and opted out to go with some Steeda billet aluminum top hats. As you can see, it kind of looks a little rough because I actually bought these used, but I mean, they're still 100% functional, still 100% okay. No cracks or anything, just some dirt smudges, and that's pretty much it. As you can see, I went ahead and built this one already. This one's all set to go. My adjustment for a softer or harder ride is up top. I just wanted to make sure everything worked before I went ahead and show you guys how I did it. Instead of removing the OEM top hat, we no longer have to do that anymore, so we just set that one aside. Here is what the shock itself looks from BC. So I'll go ahead and kind of just show you how I put this together. Alright guys, so to put this all together, what you want to go ahead and do is you want to get your billet aluminum Steeda top hat that you're going to be using. The Steeda billet aluminum top mount comes with its spacer, so you're going to grab the spacer, slide it on. Now I am going to go ahead and use a little bit of some just blue Loctite just to be safe. Now when it comes down to this locking nut, you don't want to lock it on too tight. I believe they recommend anywhere from 14 to 20 foot-pounds of torque, which I mean can be pretty easily done just by hand. So you just want to put a little bit of Loctite just to make sure. Let that go all around. Alright, once that's kind of made its way around all the threads, what you want to go ahead and do is you want to go get your top hat. And then you want to get your retaining nut, which will slide right onto there. What you want to do is once you get to the point where this locking nut will no longer spin on its own, what you want to do is you want to get a 5mm Allen socket key, slide it right into the top. Now I believe this up here is actually a 21 wrench. However, I don't have one, so I'm just going to use an adjustable wrench and just start to tighten this down. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down. When we get pretty far down, I'll pick it back up and show you guys how I install the actual ride adjuster from BC. Okay, so now that we got this top hat tying down, like I said, you don't want to put too much torque behind it. I just went ahead and went with the wrench as far as I could. Once I got it hand tight, or pretty tight with just, you know, once I got it hand tight, then I knew I was good to go. Next, you're going to get your adjuster. Now to mount your adjuster, it simply just slides in. As you can see right now, if you go ahead and turn it, it makes no clicks. It's not grabbing anything, obviously. The hose stem is spinning. So what you want to do is you just want to slide it in place. Try to grab the nut underneath. Get a couple turns out of it. I'm just going to keep on going. Once you get to the point where you can't really get your hand in there, it's a 14mm wrench, but the wrench actually doesn't fit between the top of it and then the bottom retaining nut. So what I'm doing is I'm just getting some needle nose pliers that fit right underneath it and just give it one more little snug turn, and that's pretty much it. Now, if you hear, you'll actually hear the clicking of the adjustment from the shock itself. So I'm not sure if the camera's picking that up or not, but you have 30 clicks of adjustment. I'm going to set this one up the same way I did this other side, and what I went ahead and did is just went all the way to one side and then did 15 the opposite way. So I'm just going to put it right in the middle of soft and hard. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And we'll leave it there. Now these are ready to go ahead and mount in the car. Alright you guys, before I go ahead and reinstall my BC shock, I'm going to go ahead and put my subframe bolts back in place to hold the shock where it's supposed to be. Now I'm going to go ahead and do that. Like I said, I'm using this jack to kind of put pressure on the subframe itself. I put pressure on the subframe pretty much to the point where I kind of got it almost touching. There's a small space there. But I'm going to go ahead and just start tightening up my screws. It's these two front 13mm. Our IRS 24mm bolt. I already got this one started, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that done, and then we'll pick it back up to install the shock. Alright you guys, so I kind of moved forward with the install because I was having kind of a hard time trying to figure it all out, but as you can see, it is all installed now. I got these top two bolts in place. I got the bottom two mounting bolts, head nuts in place. Now per BC specifications, so to explain a little better of what I did, I went ahead and mounted the two top bolts in place where they're supposed to go, and then I compressed the IRS, which is compressing the spring, 3/8 of an inch to give it preload. And then once I did that, that's when I noticed that the bottom mount of my shock wasn't touching the bottom holes of the subframe itself. So what I went ahead and did is once I preloaded the spring, I loosened up this locking collar, and then I just spun the whole shock, which I'm spinning these threads into the collar, and I kept going. Actually, you know what, reverse that. I went opposite way. I turned the opposite way to take the threads out of the bottom shock until my bottom two mounting holes sat flush up against the car itself. Once I did that, I went ahead and put in my bolts, put in my screws where they're supposed to go. Now all I'm gonna do now is just go back, grab this lock collar, and tighten it down. And that's pretty much it. We're gonna go ahead and do that. Put my brake line back in place, which is just this one bolt, and that should be pretty much it. I'm gonna torque down my RS subframe bolts to spec, which I believe it's 129 foot-pounds. Don't quote me on that, I have to verify. And then that's pretty much it. We are officially done in the rear. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up, finish the other side, and then I'll show you guys what we're looking like. Alright, you guys, as you can see, the car is back down. All four wheels and tires are back on. Everything installed. As far as the dampening settings, everything is set to about halfway. In the rear, I got 30 notches of adjustability. I'm at 15. In the front, I got 32 notches of adjustability. I'm at 16. Now, one thing that I did not install is my Steeda subframe braces. Now, the reason being is because, as expected, I knew I was going to have to go back and adjust these anyways. Right now, I have exactly about 1.5 inches worth of space between the wheels, the top of the wheel, and the fender. About 1.5 inches gap, which actually isn't too bad at all. But what's awesome is that I have the same amount of gap on the other side. So that tells me that my measuring was pretty spot on. I would say maybe I could drop this rear maybe another 1/2 inch just to give it a nice gap here. As you can see, I got about almost 2 fingers. I say if I could put like another just 1 finger, it'll be perfect. So I would say lower the rear about 1/2 inch and then raise the front about 1/2 inch or maybe even 1 inch. Like I said, I'm definitely gonna need an alignment up front, which is why I for sure need to raise the car, because as soon as I get rid of this camber, this top of the wheel is going to come outwards a little bit and definitely rub. So I need to bring that up. Alignment on both sides. Like I said, the rears are pretty much even as they should have been per my measurements. Those 345 is looking beefy. So with that being said, you guys, that pretty much ends this video. This video was the install. It did take me a while just because I was missing some pieces and I had to go out and get some tools or whatnot, but for the most part it wasn't too hard. It's just time consuming. Like I said, this was the install. My next video will be the height adjustment. And then once I get that video out, or once I go ahead and adjust this vehicle like I need to, I'm going to go ahead and move on, get an alignment, so on and so forth. And then after my alignment, I'll probably have to do a height adjustment again, at least just on the front, so I can really see how much this camber is going to affect my gap. But that's pretty much it, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing the Mustang again. It definitely will not be the last. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace.